If you have said to yourself, I should write that, or if someone has said to you, you should write that, then I'm talking to you because you need to write. And that's why you're tuned in to yWrite. Hi, welcome to yWrite. I'm your host, Angela Grout, and thank you again for tuning in to another episode to find out why writers are writing. So hopefully it helps you to write your story, and hopefully you'll be interested in reading some of the stories of the writers that are on the show. Today, I have Judge Rebecca Crampton-Kamukala on the show, and I want to tell you a little bit about this judge. She is a friend and a fellow writer from the Springfield Creative Memoir Writers. I say we because her and I are both in the same writing group at the Springfield Museum. We've been in the Springfield Museum program. We'll talk to her about that, but I've been there for about 7 years. Judge Crampton-Kamukala is a writer, a speaker, and a retired judge. She was appointed the first woman's judge for the juvenile court system in Massachusetts by Governor Dukakis in 1986. That one day could become a trivia question somewhere, I know. Who was the first woman's judge? Now, for almost a decade before she was a judge, she practiced law in the juvenile court system as an investigator on care and protection cases. Many in this area will recognize her from the court system, but people from around the world are going to recognize her because she has a passion to help people and to teach. Her energy and passion to help others have brought her from being a homemaker to an economics teacher to teaching in Turkey, becoming a mother, a lawyer, a judge, and now she's writing her memoirs. So today we're going to talk about Judge Rebecca Crampton-Kamukala, but we're also going to talk about her writing, why she's writing her memoirs, and what writing groups help, how writing groups can help. So I want to welcome here to the show, Judge Crampton-Kamukala.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
This is great to have you on the show because you are a very active writer.
Yes.
And you have had a very extremely active, diversified, multi-career in your life.
Yes.
So, since, we've been in the same writing group, I know some of your writings, but you're writing your memoirs from not being a judge, from being who you are. And I want to ask you, what made you start writing your memoirs?
Because I felt I had such a varied life, and someone in the family should know, further down. My father started writing his memoirs when he was 90. He didn't get that far, and because it was just beginning to get into the computer age, and he was unfamiliar with that, but he tried.
So you have some history from your dad, and now
Yes.
you can kind of continue.
And my brothers were encouraging him to tell his story. Eventually, I think they were just questioning him, and they put it on film. And some
that's called video memoir.
Yeah, but
it's so important for families to know their history.
Right.
And the fact that first of all, congratulations on being a judge, but becoming a judge. I don't want to use the word later in life, but you went to law school when you were a young mother.
Yes. I had 3 children.
You went to school to be a teacher.
Yes.
And then you traveled, and we're going to get into that. But then you started having your children. You have 3 young children. You decided to go back to school to be a lawyer.
Yes.
Yes. Let's just talk about what prompted you to become a lawyer at that point.
Oh, well.
You weren't fulfilled being a teacher or a mother?
No, it wasn't really any of those things. There's no lawyer in my background. It's either farmers or engineers.
Yeah.
Mostly. And all my brothers became engineers or mathematicians at Harvard, MIT, and all that kind of thing.
And you have 4 brothers.
I have 4 living brothers.
And the fun thing is she's a twin.
And I'm a twin.
And she has a twin brother.
And a twin brother. Now we are the only 2 left.
Oh.
But, and so I'm sorry, what was the question?
So we're going back to, you go to high school, you graduate.
Oh, okay.
You went off to college to study to be a teacher.
My father was a superintendent of schools in the Southern Berkshire Regional.
Mm-hmm.
He started that school. And the year after my twin brother and I graduated, in a class of 16, and we were the 2 top ones, of course. He went off with a full scholarship, naval scholarship to Tufts. My older brothers are going to Harvard and MIT. youngest brother went to the Coast Guard Academy. Then there was me.
Yeah, then there was
They
little
didn't
Becky.
have much in the way of scholarships in those days.
For
and
women?
I wanted to teach like my father's.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, I want to teach English or history or both. And he said, they're a dime a dozen, even then in the 1950s, when I graduated from high school. He said, how about a home ec teacher? I have to get a home ec teacher and I can't find them anywhere. He said, you'll never lack for a job. And as long as I wanted to be a home ec teacher, I didn't lack for a job.
Well, so, and you taught home ec, but then you decided to, cross the sea.
Yes.
I mean, and for me, I'm so fascinated by that because I haven't traveled far from home. I mean, my roots are here in Agawam. My umbilical cord may still be attached to my mother, who's a few streets down. And here, you're young, and how old were you when you took off and went to Turkey for 4 years?
I was 23, and I taught for 2 years. I planned to go right out of college, and I'd applied and been accepted. Had to get 21 recommendations. They were very long recommendations, I discovered from some of the people that responded.
21 letters of recommendation to do this?
But I was also pinned in my senior year to a gentleman from college who my parents loved, particularly my mother. And he and my mother said they would not wait for 3 years he would not wait for 3 years for me to come back.
Oh.
He was a veteran and wanted as soon as he finished college.
How come we don't pin people anymore? I want,
No.
that would be
was
sweet.
A fraternity,
So
sorority
you're
thing.
pinned to this guy, but he's not going to wait for you if you're going to go to Turkey.
Yes,
So
I want to go to Turkey for 3 years.
all right,
Forget it.
goodbye.
So I got a job here without much effort. It was a brand new school, regional, down in close Lakeville, Freetown near.
So you were going to attempt to have this relationship.
Yes.
But you still had the calling to get over to Turkey.
But I realized by the summer that after I graduated that I felt cornered into having to do this because all my friends, I introduced him to all my friends and they all became his friend. And he's still part of that friend group.
You're still friends with him today?
I would say we're friendly. Yeah.
Interesting.
And
it's just interesting how life has all these twists and turns, and you think like, well, what if you ended up marrying him then? Would you be where you are now?
Unlikely. But who knows?
So, yeah. So you went to Turkey. You were there
I went for 3 years.
You had a lot of experience there, which I know you write about in your memoirs.
Yes.
What can you share a little bit about like what you loved about being in Turkey and teaching and?
Well, the first year you were on trial, and I was in the dormitory because I was a home economics teacher, and I'd had 2 years experience, so they figured I'd be a good one to stick in the dormitory as an assistant to the house mother. But the house mother wasn't there. She'd come back for a sabbatical. Okay. And so there was just someone same age as I was. She'd gone over right after college, so she was 2 years ahead of me over there. And she was getting married to a Greek man that she had met in Turkey. And
you did meet someone in Turkey?
I did. My first husband was with the military, the American military. And I met him because I decided to stay a fourth year. And
did you come home in between while you were there, for the 4 years?
Holidays, both first, second year, were very difficult for me. We always had big celebrations.
Well, I'm thinking, and being a twin, you want to be with your twin.
He wasn't necessarily going to be around
either
because
he was in the Navy. He's in a submarine or something.
Yes, he was in the original nuclear submarine program. He was called up by Rickover to Washington and told that he had an hour to make a decision on whether he wanted to join Rickover's new.
And again, he's probably in his early 20s at this point.
Oh, same age, yeah. He was probably 23.
I can't even imagine, you have 1 hour to make this decision.
Yes.
That's going to affect your whole life and the next couple years. You won't see your family.
Don't call your wife during this hour that I'm giving you to make the decision.
Oh.
So he said yes. And his wife, I don't think ever forgave him for that. She didn't like the military life. And he went on to become captain of a nuclear submarine. And after...
I love that, you tell these stories, even just sharing them here, but, I know that you're writing them. So, I mean, your family will definitely have all of this history because you're taking the time to do this.
Yes.
I'm surprised that you want to write your memoirs after all the writing you've probably done as a judge. Never mind lawyer
well, my
and law
writing
school.
as a judge had to be just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. So it had to be very factual, and as I was doing care and protection cases and trying to make decisions whether to terminate the parental rights of a parent to a child, and what would be best for the child, because the best interests of the child were topmost. And so I had to, we had to make a decision in every case. And when I first started, that was left to the probate court. They actually took the cases from there. So then we two judges that were juvenile judges, probate court was already overwhelmed. And so we were appointed special probate court judges. And then eventually that right was given to the juvenile court judges to take the case. We not only said, yes, the children are in need of care and protection, but we went the final step on whether or not to terminate them or to try to return them to the family.
I can't even imagine having that kind of judgment, but power, to change the lives of people.
It's one I had to wrestle with, but probably gave me the most. Because other judges have said, how do you keep on doing this every day? And I said, because I think I may be making a difference in child's life.
I mean, so again, I want to circle back to, you went to Turkey, you come home, you get married, you have 3 children, and you say, I want to go, I want to be a lawyer. I mean, you went to law school while your kids are young.
Yes.
I mean, how did you balance all of that?
Well, one thing, at the time I graduated, there were 19 women and all the rest were male lawyers. It was the 1970s, and women were just breaking into being lawyers. There wasn't a lawyer in my ancestry that I know of. I'm not sure any of my children are going to.
I know, that's why I'm like, what was the calling to go do that?
It was because I got involved in the Quality Integrated Education Committee, and my youngest was adopted. He was mixed race, and I felt he and any child like him deserved to be in a classroom where they saw other people that looked like them. It was very divided by where they lived in Springfield.
Yeah, well, it's still kind of divided by your neighborhoods, wherever you live.
Yes. And so I said that I felt that schools should be integrated. So I went to a huge meeting, because at one point it was Springfield and Boston were under a law that they had to integrate the schools somehow, and it hadn't happened. And in the meantime, the whole law was overturned. But they had one of the senators had a big meeting about it, said anyone who wants to speak about either for or against the law being around. Well, I got up and spoke for it. I was booed by about 300 people that were there and said, okay, now I've done my part and I'm going home.
But then you wanted to change the law and you become a lawyer and you write laws.
Well, 2 of the people, an African-American woman that was part of our congregation at the church that I had just gone back to, actually, because that was
back in the this is in the 70s.
In the early 70s, 73, approached me and said, we were there last night. We were so thrilled. I hadn't gotten to know them beforehand. And we became best friends, but they introduced me to this group of mostly African-American people in the Square area.
Yeah.
And they were fighting to get integration of the schools. And I said, that's what I'm for, because I want my youngest to feel that because he's in a neighborhood with all white kids and 16 acres where we lived.
Wow.
And at this stage, it didn't probably bother him because he was about 3 years old at that point. But
you have such a great memory to recall everything in your life, and the way that you're writing, that I've seen, like it's so, like, I want to say poetic in a way, because it flows very nicely. Like, you definitely have shared when you write, it's kind of chronological, But at the same time, when you're sharing, you're not always writing chronological, correct?
Correct. I jump around.
So I mean, I jump around, here going, I want to circle back to why you became a lawyer, but you've had this, you were a judge for, I want to say like what, 20 years? I don't know.
Well,
you were supposed to retire at 70.
22 years what brought me to 70.
Okay, and you had to retire at 70.
At 70, but I have a new family. My new
Second
husband,
family, yes.
who I had for 5 years, felt he had to bring his children over here because their mother was not doing.
Where is your second husband from?
From Tanzania,
okay.
East Africa.
Okay. So now you're raising a second family,
yes.
Starting over again.
The youngest had just turned 7.
And you just retired from being a judge.
Yes, and I was 70.
And how old are the kids you're raising at 70?
They were 7 and 12, and then their older brother came over just before he was. We applied for him before he was 21. He was 22 by the time he came, but he wanted to go to college over here.
So now you're raising your second family, you're in your 70s, you're a retired judge, so you decide to start writing your memoirs.
Yes.
And then something happens, you get called back to work.
What?
Right, you got called back into work to...
Oh, well, I applied. You have to apply.
Mm-hmm.
They don't come looking for you necessarily. If you're retired, you're
that's
retired.
What I'm saying. Like, you retire at 70, but then you still went and you were still practicing law as a judge until almost 80.
I went to 80.
You went. You
You're
retired.
To my 80th birthday, I was told by the Chief Justice, no judge that has been recalled has gone as long as the whole 10 years. It's time for you to retire. I was 80 by that point.
And so now, at this point, are you when did you join the Springfield? How long have you been writing with the Springfield Creative Writers at the museum?
Since 2009, the year after.
Okay, so 16 years.
Yes. And
in that time, like, what I guess I want the writers to know like how important being part of a writers group is, because I mean, number one, it's important to me. I've met Judge Crampton-Kamukala, and and from learning or listening to your writing and watching your writing, it's helped improve my own writing too. But what made you join a writers group?
Because I wouldn't write unless I was in a writers group.
Oh, so you weren't writing them at home?
To the extent that if I knew class was coming up and I wanted to have something to read when I went in,
yep,
I would write at home. But it would be like doing homework.
Yeah.
The night before.
Oh, interesting. So you'll write for the class.
Yes.
Then you'll be able to read, and then do you do your editing class? I mean, I see you do writing when you're in the group too.
I'm pretty much writing it. I don't edit very much.
Mm-hmm.
I'll reread it, and words have been left out, or I have a tendency to get distracted. And just the other day I was writing about going over to Turkey, and somehow the next thing I knew I was writing about being with my Grandpa Jones in a one-room cabin where he lived in Otis, right across from the ski bridge, which I saw being built. And
do you have a diary that you go back to look on?
No,
this
no
is
diary.
All your memory. It's all your memory. That's amazing. You actually read a piece at the Springfield Museum, and I want to include it in this program because I know that. The piece that you read at the museum, we both participated in, I think it's called Words Off the Page or Writers Off the Page or something.
Right, yes.
And we got to read, a 3 to 5 minute excerpt of what we were working on. And this clip here we're going to show, this is you reading how you were preparing to get ready to go to Turkey.
I think so.
The first
time.
Yeah.
What it was.
I know. I'm like, is that what that is? I don't know. So let's show you this clip right now. It's a couple minutes. You can, listen to her, her writing. She's going to read it. So you hear the author share her story.
Life after college. My twin brother, Tim, recently said to me that he had come across a wedding photo from his first marriage that lasted through 30 years and 3 children. He said some forgotten guy was the best man. I said, that was my then boyfriend, Dave, that everyone in college thought I was going to marry. All my friends seemed to be getting married that summer of 1959, right after college graduation. It was so catching that couples who had just met were getting married. My twin brother, Tim, married Sandy suddenly on Labor Day weekend that year of 1959. He was 21, as was I, of course, and his new wife was 18, just graduated from high school. I stood up for Sandy, and my steady, Dave, was the best man. It was hastily put together. Why the rush? I think Tim's hormones just couldn't wait any longer. We were 21, but after all, no one wanted babies out of wedlock, and a wedding did the trick. We were on the verge of birth control pills, but they weren't available if you weren't married. In our recent talk, I told Tim that I was in despair in 1959, as I had planned to go abroad to teach and have adventures. My application had been accepted and approved by the Missionary Society in Boston, but then I met Dave during my senior year at UMass. He became best friends with my friends, had let me use his almost brand new car to get to my student teaching assignment in the spring of 1959. And my parents thought he was perfect for me. And he wouldn't wait 3 years while I was gone. Every time I thought of marriage with Dave, it seemed boring and was not the adventure I'd been looking towards. I reluctantly gave up my chance to go abroad to teach, instead teaching at a brand new regional school in Lakeville, Massachusetts, near the Cape. I was actually enjoying all the new teachers like myself, mostly single, though several of them were engaged or had a steady boyfriend. I was thinking at the time, I don't know how to break off this relationship with Dave. I know it's not right for me. Maybe I'll have to marry him, and if it doesn't work, I'll get divorced? What? No one divorced in 1959. I shuddered at the thought. Halfway through the fall of 1959, Dave must have finally caught on to my reluctance to talk about marriage, amongst other things, and preferred to stay and talk with his mother than go out with me and his friends. We talked and broke off our relationship, which I have never regretted, though my mother cried when she found out. She had thought he was the perfect one for me, as did most of my friends. Now, 61 years later, he and his wife are still good friends with my friends. All we single teachers at the regional school were having a ball my first year, both teaching and after-school activities together, so I didn't give a thought about going overseas as a missionary teacher when I broke up with Dave. However, the next summer of 1960, many of my single teacher friends married, and the togetherness of our out-of-school activities disappeared. That summer of 1960, I still wanted to stay in the Middleborough area, and someone told me that the Fall River YMCA ran a summer day camp for children from 6 years old, and they were looking for a new director. I jumped at the chance, saying to myself, I can do that. Wow, I had never even been to camp myself, neither full-time nor day camp. But here I was saying at the age of 22, I can do that. I did it, to the amusement of the college-age counselors. However, I was good at making schedules, and I threw myself on their mercy, telling them I had a huge learning curve if they would help me. They did. I read up on the animals and plants of the area and would take small groups to observe nature. I had never even seen the game of tetherball, but they were quick to show me how it was played. It helped that I had played basketball throughout junior and senior high school, where I was very competitive. My second year teaching in Lakeville was full, but I missed the many friends whose weddings I had attended and no longer were available after hours for socialization. However, I had been accepted to evaluate other schools when they were going through their reaccreditation. I was also called on to speak about home economics careers, which was my career at the time, at a couple of colleges. And with the help of my students and as part of the curriculum, and with the permission of the school officials, I taught my students how to wallpaper a wall in the middle home economics room. And we reupholstered a child's easy armchair and displayed it in the showcase at school. But was this enough to satisfy my yen for adventure? the home economics team from the state education department had come to evaluate me early in January 1961, and were so pleased with my work that they said if I kept on doing that well, I could eventually work for the state in a official position such as they held. I can remember looking at these two middle-aged ladies with no adventure in their souls, thinking, is this the destiny I want? A few days later, I listened to President Kennedy speaking after his inauguration in January 1961, saying, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. I immediately called the mission group, and by August 1961, I was on a slow boat to Turkey to teach for 3 years. I ended up staying 4 years and met my future husband in that 4th year.
It's nice to hear the author's voice, sharing the story. I assume that you're comfortable sharing your voice as a judge. I mean,
yes.
Are you nervous when you get to the microphone to share your story like that?
No.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of experience public speaking.
Yes, I did, because I was kind of outgoing as a judge too. Number one, you have to be in the courtroom, you have to be able to speak up, and but even then I would talk to groups.
Do you, in your memoirs, talk about any of the court cases that you've worked on, or anything that's like kind of stuck with you, or are you keeping it more of your personal memoir for your family, keeping business separate?
Yeah, probably mostly keeping. I don't talk much about. I don't like to take individual cases because juvenile court in particular is closed, meaning the public can't come in. They don't know the names if anything goes on. Occasionally a case, because I was also doing jury trials, and those back until 1996, even the murder cases came to us. And I did a very big murder case in 1994 where one teenage boy killed another teenage boy after chasing him.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, again, your memoir is about your family history, and more importantly about your journey in life.
Yes, my journey, which I thought went this way, and then we went this way.
Well, don't we all think it's going to go this way? And you're like, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this. And it's so, I mean, your life is so inspiring to me. I mean, just, I'm 55 years old and thinking, okay, I'm in retirement. It's like, well, no, I'm 55. I'm going to have a whole nother life. I might have a whole nother family to raise one day. I don't know. I mean, I don't, maybe I'll go back to law school. I won't go to law school. But, I mean, you are just constantly just staying busy, staying active. The writers group, we meet every week. And you've been going every week for 16 years. What's like some of the things that you get out of the group when you're there? And, can you tell us a little bit about what it's like for you and what the groups are like so people know?
Yes. Well, our group is one where they don't critique it to the point where you shouldn't have written it that way, you should have written it this way. It's supposed to be, what did you like about what the person just read?
Yes.
In response to it. And over the years, there has been critiques at the same time, but they're gentle critiques. I don't want to join a writing class that is in college or something like that, where they're critiquing your writing.
Well, I agree. I love it when, someone's like, oh, I really liked when you shared, the part about you, packing your bag to, for Turkey. Or I like it when someone says, I wanted to know more about that. Like, tell me more about what that guy looked like that you went on the date with or something, and it's just, it adds to the meat and potatoes of the story, you know, which we don't realize that somebody's interested in it, because, we're just kind of throwing that on the page. So we write, I'll share, we write for about an hour, and then we do get to share either what we've written or, something that we have written before, and get our feedback on it. And then, we just keep coming back because we want to keep writing. At this point, I feel like your memoir is going to be volumes.
Well, I'm going to have to break up the volumes. So I've tried now to get my 3. I went for 3 and stayed 4 years, partly because I was enjoying
teaching in Turkey, right?
Yes. And I actually thought I might become a permanent missionary, because we were associate missionaries.
So you think just the Turkey will be one memoir, like a snapshot, and then your childhood on the farm?
I think it could be, or at least a part of,
Yeah, because when for people who write their memoirs, I mean, you think about your whole life, which is more of an autobiography too. It's huge. I mean, it spans decades. Where when you take that snapshot, and like the snapshot of you teaching in Turkey is a 4-year snapshot.
Yes.
So that's a lot to write about. And then raising this family, and then raising your second family, and each one of them has
Third
their
family.
third family. Yeah, let's just talk about how she's raising a third family now. It's just crazy. So I do want to ask you, to share some advice for people who are looking to start their memoir. How do you start?
You start by probably joining a group similar to mine. I know there are many groups like that around.
Yes.
The only one I know about in this part of is the one at the museum.
Yeah, the Springfield Museum has a great writers group, and you can go online and sign up there.
Right. And so that's what I would recommend, because for years, the other night I was saying to myself, well, because our leader,
yes, our leader,
and I were getting together going to MGM to write for 2 hours yesterday.
Yes, we do. We like to gather off hours. I call us the MGM writers.
So the night before, I thought, well, I'll just write one paragraph so that when I get there, I can use as
a prompt to start.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I ended up writing 850 words, which is like a whole.
I know that feeling.
So I said, okay, this has to go. This is a finish for this one, and I'll have to start another one tomorrow.
But you know how great it is that you sit down to do that, just to get that story on the paper so it's there.
Yes.
This has been so enlightening. I'm so glad that you came on the show, and I think you're going to be such an inspiration to the audience who's watching this to know that, first of all, at any point in your life, you can kind of keep starting over. You can make changes.
Yes.
And your story is important.
Enjoy life.
Enjoy life. And your story is important to tell. So if someone's interested, especially now that they read a little, listen to a little excerpt of your story, if they're interested in getting in touch with you, they can contact you through the Springfield Museum?
Yes.
Okay. So, if you're interested in getting in touch with Judge Crampton-Kamukala, you can definitely contact the Springfield Museum. She's part of the Springfield Museum Creative Writers Program. So, if you want to publish her memoir, that'd be great, because we all want to read it. And again, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It was great.
I really appreciate it. And I thank my listening audience for tuning in every week to listen to different writers share their perspective on writing. And again, thank you for tuning into yWrite. I do have a quick prompt for you today. So at the end of the show, set your timer for 5 minutes and just start writing. And what I want you to do is take time to think about how you would write your memoir. And I want you to make a list of the different stories that have happened in your life. Just quickly jot them down. Maybe you want to write a story about, what happened on your first communion day, or your graduation day, or the day that you were asked out on your first date. Whatever it is, start making that list, because that's somewhere to start writing your memoirs. And then if you want to continue writing, pick one of them, set your timer for an hour, and just write about that one. All right, thanks for tuning in to yWrite. I will see you next time. Have a great day. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And again, see you later.